obviously, we're all going to send our children to the finest Jewish day schools we can get our kids into. And the tuitions at these Jewish day schools, I don't know what they're running right now in this city, but they can run $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year easy. Yeah? $25,000 a year. $65,000 a year if you got a few kids in school. Yeah? After tax dollars, that means that you have to be bringing home, let's say, $130,000 a year just to cover the schools. And at that point, you haven't put any food into the child's mouth yet. And what kind of a job pays $130,000 a year? Yeah? So the costs here are enormous. So here there are solutions, but we can't achieve the geula that I'm going to describe as individuals. The solution to that problem only happens if Klal Yisrael achieves an achdus. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Look at the following analysis. The Catholic school system, the private school system of the Catholic Church, provides top-notch secular education and religious education. So in 1993, 1994, those are the latest statistics I've gotten. I admit these are old. These are more than 10 years old. But nevertheless, if you work the numbers backwards, you'll see that these are still significant. The average annual tuition paid to Catholic elementary and secondary schools was respectively $1,628 a year and $3,643 a year. Now let's say those costs have doubled since 1993. We're still talking about costs that are a tiny fraction of what we're paying. Now, where is the money coming from? So the answer is, the Catholic Church subsidizes more than half the cost of every Catholic child's education. Where do they get that kind of money? So the answer is that Catholics tithe. They take 2%, 3% of their money, and they give it over to the church to make sure the kids get Jewish education. Not my kid, to make sure the children get Jewish education. What would happen, I mean, Catholic education, sorry. They don't want Jewish education, yes. Okay. What would happen if an entire city banded together and the city said that every person in the city is going to give, not all of their Meiser, because after all, Jewish education is not the only priority, there are other priorities. Let's say half of their Meiser, of every Jew's Meiser in the city, is going to go towards a fund that's going to be carefully invested by a group of clever investors that will then subsidize Jewish education. What could that do? So if this sounds like a pipe dream, people have done it. And I'm going to describe to you some experiments that are going on right now where people have successfully pulled this off, like this. There's an organization in Seattle called the Samus Foundation. So the Samus Foundation pays all tuition costs beyond $3,000 per child for any Jewish child in Seattle who wants to go to a day school, so that no parent ever has to pay more than $3,000 per child to send their kid to a day school. Where'd that money come from? The poor, the middle class, and the wealthy all give a significant portion of their money. It goes into the Samus Foundation fund, and the Samus Foundation then covers the cost of Jewish education. Why? In Seattle, they felt that was in the interests of the community, that would be a good thing for Jews in that community if they would do such a thing. That's something that can be done here. Obviously, it's not something that can be imposed from the top down. It has to be a grassroots sort of organization. But grassroots can accomplish a lot, yeah? Another example. There's a group called Avichai, which many of you have probably heard of. So Avichai, with the support of the communities in these cities, initiated programs in Cleveland and Atlanta, entitling Jewish families there to $3,000 of free tuition a year, provided that child was not yet attending a Jewish day school and moved into a Jewish day school. Now, the reason Avichai put on that rejoinder is that they're involved in Kiruv, and they want kids who are not getting Jewish education to move in. But there's no reason you can't do the exact same thing for kids who are already in Jewish day schools. It just requires getting people to put together the money to pull something like this off. This idea occurred to me yesterday. I was in a certain city yesterday, and a very, very well-known Hasidic Rabbi who lives in a different city came to that city, and in the period of a couple of days raised millions of dollars for his Mossad, which he then took back to the city where his Mossad is. And he does wonderful things with that money. Meanwhile, the Jewish day school in that town is in danger of closing down because they can't get enough money together to keep the Jewish day school running. But he raised millions of dollars from those same people who were sending their kids to that Jewish day school. The following idea occurred to me. There are many cities where they have a Vad L'Inyanei Tzedakah, a committee set up to monitor tzedakah activities. And that committee does different things, like, first of all, they'll issue a certificate to people who are legitimate, so you can see when a legitimate person comes to collecting versus a person who's not necessarily legitimate. One of the things the Vad L'Inyanei Tzedakah can do is, they can make a takana in their city that anyone who comes into their city to raise money for projects outside of that city, as a sign of appreciation to the city, leaves 10% of the money in this fund for Jewish day schools in that city. Yeah? If Jewish day school is the single most important thing on the planet, then, of course, the Rav who's coming to collect money in that city, he supports Jewish day school education any place. He certainly has a kar satov to the city for supporting him. That shouldn't be a problem for him to leave 10% of his earnings in that city. They give 30% to the drivers. So 10% should go to the Jewish day schools. That's also a legitimate cause. Yeah? So the key is, though, that you have to be organized as a community. And if you try to save yourself as an individual, you'll drown. It has to be that Klal Yisrael in this city gets together and resolves the problem. Yeah? Fine. Okay. There's another example of this. 8 individuals in Northern Virginia founded a fund to make Jewish day school education accessible to anybody in Northern Virginia. Now, this is a different sort of model. Here what happened was, in every community, you have the poor, the middle class, the wealthy, you have the super wealthy. It's possible that there are people who they really do have an extra $500,000 they could give to something. But they don't like to do it alone, they only like to invest their money in good causes. It could be that if you could get 8, 10 people in Los Angeles like this, and there are in the Haredi community, in the frommest of frum communities here, there are 5 or 10 people like this who could afford the extra $500,000. If those people can all partner together, that could create the beginning of a fund. And they might be willing to do it if they saw that all the rest of the community was also willing to contribute. But if you get 5 or 10 people to give a $500,000 each, so you're starting off with a $5 million fund, and then you have the whole rest of the community match that and come up with another 10 million. Yeah? And so you've got now a fund which is putting off $1 million a year in revenues. That could help a lot. That could take the cost down for every single person in the community. So there's all these different models. The key, though, is that at a grassroots level, people have to do something. What do you see? When Klal Yisrael gets together, there's no limits to what can be done. There's huge amounts of wealth in Klal Yisrael, even if there isn't huge amounts of wealth in any particular individual's pocket. But we as a community can do very, very, very big things if we decide this is our priority and we organize. Therefore, I'm making the recommendation that you should go home, speak to your spouse. The two of you should go and speak to your Rav. Everyone should do this, and we should organize something and solve the problem. It's ridiculous that in the year 2008, that we can't afford to raise our children properly because we can't afford to give them a Jewish education. Like we can send men to the moon, but we can't give our kids a Jewish education. That's an artificial problem created by the Yetzer. It is not a real problem. There is enough wealth to pay the meager salaries of Jewish teachers. Yeah, that wealth is there. It's just that we have to organize ourselves, and then it will happen.